Welcome back to another episode of the Paycheck to Daycheck podcast. It is episode 122. It's going to officially be our very first podcast episode because I did a little teaser on the 1 year anniversary of the podcast of Ashley and I doing our last episode. And then the last one we uploaded was announcing that Casey was going to be my new co-host, in case you missed that. We are excited to bring another podcast episode. Today, we're going to be talking about a pretty popular topic, I feel like, right now, and it's why are resellers quitting? A lot of people are leaving the reselling world. Is reselling still worth it? So let's dive into that topic.
It definitely has changed a lot since Liz and I started. I can definitely attest to that. I mean, we started close to 7 years ago now, I believe it was, where we started to take it serious. We were sourcing from Goodwill a lot on the road, I feel like. Prices have definitely gone up. Anybody that's been sourcing from thrift stores the last few years, just like a lot of retail stores, have increased their prices pretty significantly. I mean, we used to be able to go on Dollar Day and pretty much score quite a bit of stuff.
We would get cartloads.
Yeah.
Like, I would have just so much that it took me forever to go through and to list everything. And that was back in the day, I feel like. And then also, I don't know if you guys are listening, if your Goodwills do this, but every other Saturday was 50% off day. So you could really score things for really cheap. And I feel like that was a good thing. But that's definitely, I'm noticing, not the case anymore.
Yeah. I mean, now they have $2 day, at least in our area. But like, we were just there and I could see a manager pulling next week's tags already. So they're going through, and anything that's about to turn $2, if it's too good of a deal, they're basically just retagging it for, further months down the road. And the average list price for their shirts, I mean, when we started, $3.79 you could find shirts for quite often, maybe up to like $5.49. And now it's not uncommon to see $10.99, $12.49, and I mean, we've seen shirts over $24.99 for polo shirts that Goodwill's getting for free,
with defects on them too.
Yeah,
so they're not even in good condition.
Yeah, they're just basically looking at the brand and have been trained to look for certain brands now. And if it's a good brand, regardless of condition, they're just pricing it very high, too high for that much profit to be left for a reseller per se. We sell on Whatnot now with polos, but it's just a high volume game there. I mean, we're just trying to find as many as we can for under the $2 range because on Whatnot, it's not very typical that you're going to get $25 or $30 for polo, where you might be able to get that if you wait on eBay for long enough. The competition has just increased tremendously also, which is another part of why I think people have started to quit the reselling and or dial it back quite a bit. Really just competition. I mean, Liz and I, we have a YouTube channel, as some of you know, where we basically, the whole concept of freeway flipping was, we were living on the road and we were going to flip stuff while doing that. And just that gives people the idea of like, well, if they can do it, so can I. And I mean, we've fallen into that with plenty of people on YouTube that gives us inspiration to, continue doing it or try things differently.
Or learn just things outside of reselling. There's just been, the rise in the last, since we started, the rise of quote unquote influencers or content creators in the reselling space, I think has increased tremendously.
Yeah.
And as much as, those bigger names don't want to admit it, I mean, they're giving people this idea that they can do it too, which is great. And that's where we've gotten our inspiration. But then, you're also creating more competition.
Yeah, which I mean, it goes with this podcast too. I mean, Liz and I like to do it because we like the community aspect of it and like just helping like-minded people and talking to like-minded people. I mean, the older we get, the smaller our circles kind of get. And, a lot of people, their circle is their, coworkers at their 9-to-5 job or career. So for us, it's like, we obviously share this interest for us to be able to do it together. We also just like to surround ourselves with people that are doing it as well, because they can relate a little bit better to us and like what we do on a daily basis.
Just like today. So I think we shared that we're doing a booth at the Mall of Peddlers. If you're ever in the Phoenix area, it's in Apache Junction where we live. And it's not really an antique mall. It's more of like unique finds. Everybody has a booth. You pay per month. And we just started it this month in March. March 1st was our first day in it. And we're doing it with our friends Ryan and Bianca from Collectors Alley AZ. And we'll be talking a lot about them because we're kind of going in on them, and we'll talk in future episodes about, why we chose to do that. But we were there today putting more clothes in the booth. And it's so funny because we haven't done too many shows on Whatnot, but we've already met several people in the Whatnot community that are actually local to us. Shop of Doom, he came to our yard sale. He has a place at another kind of antique place. Met him, Chris. And then today, we had never met Garage Sale Greg, but I hear Ryan talking at the front, and I'm like, I know that voice from Whatnot, because he doesn't show his face, because he does a bunch of like sports cards and Pokemon cards and things like that. So I've never really seen what he looked like. So it was pretty funny.
I hadn't met him either.
But that was one of the things that when we met today and got to see him in person, he's like, you guys totally understand what I'm doing, because he has people that ask him, what do you do all day long? And he's like, what do I do? I work all day long. Yeah. Like, he's constant doing multiple Whatnot shows, and that's how he makes a living.
Yeah, which we've started to do Whatnot. We need to be more consistent with it, which that again with reselling, consistency is huge, whether it's eBay or whatever platform you're selling on. If you stop listing for a while, which is easily done because it can burn you out. A lot of people, it's their least favorite thing to do with reselling is the listing aspect of it. Some people love it or can, don't have any problems with it, but a majority of the people we talk to, when we ask them, like, well, what don't you like about it? It's the listing aspect of it for whatever reason.
Well, right, because sourcing and finding, the diamonds in the rough, that's the exciting part. Right. That's the thrill.
Yeah. And then, having to sit and wait on stuff with eBay, that can be frustrating. And, we've had that frustration as well. I remember we were up to close to 3,000 listings, and my mindset was, well, let's just get to 6,000, because in theory that we're going to double our income. We know how to source items, even though it is a little bit more expensive now. But getting the motivation to do another 3,000 listings is difficult. So, and you got to have the space for all of this. So we haven't paid for any warehousing up until this point. Now our friend Ryan does. He has a couple warehouse spaces that he rents out. But we have the outbuilding in the back. And even though it has our private label product in it, we can still have room between that and our garage for what we have on eBay. But the next goal for us really is to try to scale it into like a physical store that has a warehouse where everything's in one location. Because another reason people kind of get burnt out on reselling is if your home is your warehouse. If you work from home, store everything from home, print from home, and you're kind of just stuck at home all day, it can be hard to get motivated sometimes. Easy to sit down for a 10-minute break and turn into an hour, whether it's watching TV or just scrolling on your phone, watching videos, about whatever. That's another thing that can burn people out with reselling is if you have all your product at your residence, essentially.
Yeah, I feel like we got to that point because we just had maxed out our space in the garage at the beginning of last year, and then we were using our dining room table as a prep area. And if you guys follow us on Instagram for Freeway Flippers, I know I've posted a few times where it's like our entire dining room table is just filled with stuff, and then our spare room gets filled with things. And I just got to the point I was so tired of seeing that stuff, and that's why I think we needed to kind of shift what we were doing, because it became very repetitive for me, and I don't like to list. I mean, you guys know, listeners from the podcast, that I do not like listing clothing. It is the worst thing ever, and I would rather I don't know what I would rather do, but I would rather do anything but list clothing.
Yeah, and for us, I mean, we choose to source clothing, golf polos specifically, because we've been starting to do those on Whatnot.
And then we don't have to list.
Yeah, which is nice because, you don't have to list the item. The shipping's covered, and you basically just have to sell the item, put it in a poly mailer, put a sticker on it, and send it out the door. So like for us, our goal is just to, build up enough of a collection, for example, that we can, have a show where we pull 100 of them, for example, and just bank on making anywhere from $3 to $15 a shirt, depending. I mean, some shirts surprise us and we get more than that, but for us, it's a volume game.
Which is kind of how eBay used to be for us.
Yeah.
Going back to what we were talking about with the Goodwill and the dollar days and the 50% off days. I mean, if we could buy a shirt for $1 and sell it for $5 at the time, we were okay with it because there weren't as much fees. Shipping wasn't as much as it is now.
Yeah, I mean, you could put $5 or $6 on shipping and have it be covered. I mean, nowadays with the increase in shipping costs, I mean, sometimes you have to charge upwards of $8 for a shirt to be shipped across the country for us, which, a lot of people aren't willing to pay that. And if you build that into your price and offer free shipping, you can certainly do that. But sometimes that makes you not as competitive in the marketplace, so you're holding on to your product for longer.
Yeah, I think people are just not making as much as they used to. I think that, I mean, I'm not saying that you can't, because we have done pretty well on certain items, more rare items or, where there's no competition. But a lot of like the clothing resellers, I think they're leaving because there's so much competition. And that could be, during COVID, when everything was shut down and people were locked in their houses, they had nothing to do but list and, be involved in reselling and go out and find stuff. And now it's like people are going back to work and they're not finding as much as they used to. And I think that's been discouraging for a lot of people.
Yeah. And like with our specific situation, one of our business partners went back to work full time. And so our partners are basically going to be getting on their own insurance, and which leaves Liz and I to get our own. And it's going to be pretty expensive. That's a benefit, obviously, that you get with a lot of companies offer health insurance. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of companies do, depending on what field you work in. And so by the time you look at what you're spending through your reselling business, if you have an LLC set up, for example, how much you're spending for the health insurance compared to if that's taken care of with a company in addition to having a salary, it can make it a bit of a difficult decision just to continue with it full time. Also, once you've went out and sourced for the day, I mean, you really don't have, outside of shipping, other stuff to do other than list. So that's where it can get kind of monotonous as a reseller. I mean, yes, it is still fun to go out and find that good buy and, get something for a good deal that you can make a good profit on. But, it's still the process of going out, finding it, taking the time to do that, list it, the time to ship it, so factoring in all that stuff. Initially, a lot of people start reselling when they already have another job, and then they scale it to a point of, well, I can leave the job that I'm working for and do this full time. And again, there's a lot to be said for that, but it can get monotonous just like any other job.
Yeah, I think some people that just doing it full time, I see a lot of people scaling back and going back to jobs, and then other people just doing it part time on the side, or people quitting eBay in general and trying different platforms or just not doing reselling at all. So I'm just seeing a lot more of it now. I mean, let's be real, Ashley isn't reselling anymore. And, she had just this drive when we first met her in that leads group that we were in, the online arbitrage group. And that was what really attracted me to her, was just her excitement and her want to help and, to find those items online and, just that relationship that we built. And then we did the podcast and, I saw the writing on the wall when I could tell she just wasn't enjoying even just podcasting about reselling, because she knew in her heart she just wanted to get out of it and do other things.
Yeah, which I mean, I can honestly relate to that and to a certain aspect. I mean, I still enjoy it. We have, hopefully an exciting year coming up with our private label brand. We were just talking with our supplier last night, actually, and sounds like they're wanting to help us grow faster, which is going to be great for us. We want to try to get into more wholesaling, direct to consumer, just because Amazon, I mean, we're very lucky in the fact that we trademarked and did everything properly from the beginning. But going back to reselling, the arbitrage group that has made a living sending stuff into Amazon, a lot of them are having quite a bit of trouble recently. Amazon's really buckling down and making sure that whoever's selling on their platform is actually the brand owner or a major wholesaler for the brand.
Using a distributor. They want to know the supply chain.
Yeah.
They want to know where you're getting your items. And I called it last year, I really saw that sellers were posting about, they were not being able to use retail receipts anymore. And I mean, it's true. I think Amazon doesn't want resellers. I think they want more control over stuff. They want to make sure that the consumers that are buying on their platform aren't getting counterfeit goods, because that can happen too. If you're buying stuff and don't know where it's coming from, you're actually using a legit source of where you're getting your inventory.
Yeah, and for those not familiar with like selling on Amazon, they basically have their fulfillment by Amazon program, whereas like a reseller, for example, when Liz and I started, a lot of the products it's called ungated. So you are able to sell in that category. Some of the big brands, especially in athletics like Nike and Adidas, they were gated, for example. So what you would have to do is show an invoice of their requirement at the time was pretty low.
It was maybe 10 units.
Yeah, like 10 units. So if you provided a Nike invoice with 10 of the same shoe, a lot of times you could get ungated. Or there was even companies that you could pay, $500 and they would handle all of this for you with the goal of getting ungated in Nike or Adidas. I mean, because at the time you could go to Ross, for example, or a discount name brand discounter or wholesaler, and a lot of times just buy stuff right off the rack, send it into Amazon, and make a good profit on it. So, I mean, a lot of people started doing this. So, as you can imagine, over the last 6 or 7 years, how many arbitrage sellers there are on the platform. And like Liz said, it just opens the door for people taking advantage of the system and maybe sending in counterfeit stuff to where Amazon...
Or even, I think what was happening too is those invoices they were submitting, people were messing with them.
Yeah, or like 5 people use the same invoice. Like their system wasn't designed yet to catch that, which now they do. So if you send an invoice in that's already been used by some other seller, then it throws a red flag. But regardless, I mean, that's going to hurt any of the arbitrage sellers that have been dependent on that, going out to Target or Ross or, REI. Like I remember when we first started in the hotel room, I was going to REI outlet and buying like Patagonia and stuff, like name brand stuff for hikers and campers. But they would have like these massive sales of like stuff up to 80% off that they were just discontinuing. So if you'd catch it at the right time, we were getting boxes of REI, printing on a new sticker, putting it over the UPC, sending it to Amazon, and rolling product pretty quickly. But then those brands started to become gated to where, I was having to show so many orders like direct from a wholesaler, which we weren't able to provide. So we made the decision pretty quickly that private label would be more of what we would want, something that we can build, a brand that we can build and have control over, and then also grow outside of Amazon, so we're not depending on them.
Well, and it's trademark, so we're the only ones who are allowed to sell on any of the listings that we have.
Yeah. Which Walmart is something we've dabbled with over the last 6 or 7 years, but not really fully committed to. More just because we didn't need to, where our volume was getting handled well enough by Amazon. And we've been just slowly growing, not getting financing and up to this point. But again, this is where our supplier is going to be working with us. So hopefully we'll be able to grow quite a bit more this year, or at least faster than we have over the last 6 or 7.
And I know there's a lot of people that are interested who listen to the podcast about Amazon private label that I didn't talk a lot about because Ashley's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But we have so much knowledge in it and so much experience. We've had products that have failed. We've had products that are, have exceeded our expectation. And I really want to kind of share our journey and, give you guys insight. And maybe that's something that you guys will be interested in.
Yeah, there's still a lot of opportunity with it. It can be a little bit more difficult, but it's just doing your due diligence like you would with any business and being patient and finding the right supplier is the big thing. Like we lucked out with that too. We've got to meet them personally a few times and it's been great. So yeah, I think that's why they want to help us out this year a little bit more than they had as far as like the payments with them. So a lot of companies, it's common that they give you terms of, 3, 6 months or, whatever you work out with them. It's just something that we hadn't visited with them for a couple of years, and they brought it up saying, I think we can help you guys grow faster if we can get you guys more product at once, and then we'll just delay invoicing on our end, or payment rather. which that'll be huge for us because a lot of times we can sell that product before we would have to pay them back. So that will really help us turn over more SKUs. So, but yeah, we'll get into that at another episode.
But I think if we did not have Amazon in our private label business, there's no way we could be living off of reselling.
Yeah, I mean, just with the time and energy that we've given to it over the last few months hasn't been as much as we have with, our Amazon business, for example. I mean, we do quite a few different things as far as not just sticking with eBay only. We have started getting into Whatnot, which we want to do more and be more consistent with that.
Well, we also do print on demand.
Yeah.
So we're making a couple $100. We also get some affiliate commission. I mean, it's not a ton, but you add all that stuff up, the little things. I mean, but I guess looking back, like if we didn't have Amazon and we didn't want to have to go get a 9 to 5, I feel like we would be putting in a lot more effort into reselling.
Yeah. I mean, our listings have gone down quite a bit. And going back to what I was saying before, I mean, I know if you're sourcing properly, which even with the prices going up some at like Goodwill and local thrift stores rather, I mean, we have out here garage sales that are pretty limitless. Now, in the summer, they're going to slow down because obviously it gets really hot out here. But a lot of people still have them early morning. And then they've started to come out with like indoor garage sales, basically.
Swap meets or whatever they're calling them.
Yeah, swap meets. We even looked at getting into one, which we may. It's similar to the Mall of Peddlers where you rent out a space and that's yours to sell whatever, essentially. The only thing with that one is you have to be there physically from like Thursday through Sunday. I think 8-hour days, 9 to 5.
I believe so. That's where Shop-a-Doom is.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially if we're potentially looking into getting into a warehouse and retail space anyway. We're going to have to commit those hours, every day. It would just be nice for us. We'd like a spot that we can drop all the stuff that we do source, regardless of it. If it's us going out and going thrifting, or now we've started buying storage units. We've gotten a couple of those, which have been interesting, but again, very time consuming. Something I didn't think was going to take as much time as they do.
And that's what we're doing with Ryan and Bianca of Collectors Alley AZ. Yep. I feel like we got to a point where we were getting burnout of going to Goodwill. And we just kind of wanted to change it up. And I think sometimes resellers don't change anything. And that's why they end up giving up.
Yeah.
So for us, we noticed, we're not getting items at a cheap enough cost of goods. And we're not getting enough of those items when we're outsourcing. So let's try something different. So that's where, we started doing the storage units. And like Casey said, it is a lot of work. There's 4 of us. So that makes it, go by a little faster. We haven't hit a home run unit yet, but we've
haven't lost any money. I mean, we made money on both the units, but time put in between everybody and the profit isn't quite where I think want it to be. But I mean, also in our second unit, there's still like a quarter of it that we need to go through. So it's hard, hard telling. But that unit, I mean, it cost us like $500, and I think we've already made over $1,000 on it.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely made money. It's just it's kind of like. It's a different way to get your inventory. So you're just getting a bunch of inventory at once, and you have normally like 24 to 48 hours to clean out these units, sometimes 72, and you just have to really go through stuff. So you have your junk pile where you're just going to throw it in the trash because you can't do anything with it. Then you've got your, our booth pile for stuff that can go in a booth, like maybe breakable things and knick-knack stuff and things that we know locally would sell really good in the booth. Then stuff we're listing on a separate eBay account, stuff we're going to do on Whatnot. So definitely follow Collectors Alley AZ on Whatnot because we're going to try to do some joint shows with him.
We're actually doing one tonight.
Yeah.
So.
But by the time this podcast comes out, it'll already be past.
But it'll be our first show where it's just random stuff from storage units, which there's a category specifically for that on Whatnot. So people love to see what you pull out and bid it up and buy it.
But the buy cost for all that stuff is really, really low.
Yeah.
Because you're just getting so much for what you're paying. Yeah, you're spending a little bit more time doing it, but the buy cost is worth it because otherwise, you're paying 5 to 10 times more per item if you're finding it in a thrift store.
Yeah, we've got a lot of items. But another reason for resellers quitting. Sorry, we have a few ideas written up here. Oh, I guess the IRS changing their requirement down to $600 profit. You're going to get 1099 on. Has that gone into effect? Right.
They keep going back and forth. I don't know. I mean, we get a 1099 because we go over, but I think a lot of times, a few years ago, it was like 20,000. So what resellers were doing to get away from not having to technically claim or use that as their gross eBay sales or wherever, Amazon, on their, as income on their taxes, people were having multiple.
Yeah, they'd have like 5 or 6 accounts and just sell like, under 15,000 on each of them or whatever the number was. So the IRS caught on to that and are trying to get rid of that.
I just think they're making it where it's like, even if you're just in general, like it's really simple to sell on platforms. These platforms have really evolved to make it easy. Somebody buys something on Poshmark and there's a button where you can reposh it. And it goes with the original photos. It's how easy is that? How simple. So not just resellers are selling on these platforms. It's, just people who just kind of do it in their spare time or do it for extra cash. But it's a bummer for them because if they get over that threshold, then they're going to get a 1099.
Yeah, it's going to create a lot more 1099s, obviously, with all these different selling platforms, plus all the different resellers that have been joining them. I mean, TikTok, or not TikTok, but Whatnot, has grown tremendously. I mean, I first started seeing them at like sneaker conventions with a friend of mine out here. So Josh would take me to these sneaker conventions, and Whatnot started popping up there because it became popular in that niche. And so, that was the first time I saw it, and that was just a few years ago, and now it's like everybody's on it, it seems like. But I mean, I gotta say I do like it because you don't have to list stuff. You just put it up there and say, here's 10 seconds or 5 seconds. Or
here's this 30. Club and you want it, bid on it. And if it sells, then...
If it sells, great. If it doesn't, you just put it back and run it on another show. Eventually somebody will buy it. You'll find the right buyer, ultimately, I would think. But I don't know. It's something that, again, we need to be more consistent with. So we'll be on that topic a little bit more as we come out with more podcasts, just because our friend Ryan, we're going to interview him about Whatnot and hear his experience.
Well, he sold over 50,000 items and he's been doing it for like 3 years. So if anybody knows anything, it's so funny when we first started on Whatnot. Well, with Whatnot, we had to apply and then you have to go through this like Zoom call where they kind of go over all the stuff with somebody from Whatnot before you can schedule your first show.
Right.
So we had done that a while back, and then we just got really intimidated because we're so used to eBay, exactly what stuff's going to cost. Like we're just knowledgeable of that stuff, and it's not intimidating. We've been doing it for so long, where Whatnot was a whole different thing. It's like, how do you run something? What happens if you charge too much for shipping? How do you even charge? Just so much we need to know. So Ryan, because he had been on it so long, we would joke around with him that he was our personal Whatnot advisor. And he really did help us because he just had so many good ideas. And that's why we want to have him on the podcast in like the next couple episodes. So that way he can help any of you who are thinking about live selling, because it is kind of the new buzz out there. Mm-hmm. And it might be for you, it might not. I mean, you don't have to show your face. You can always do like a silent one. I know a lot of people do that. Like Garage Sale Greg, he doesn't show his face.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you sell. But a lot of things you can just hold in front of the camera, and just show it to your audience. And I mean, still talk to them and let them know what the item is and if there's any flaws or any of that stuff. But it's definitely a game changer compared to just sitting on items in bins in your garage or warehouse or wherever you're storing them. If you're, again, if you find the item at a good enough buy cost, a good idea of what the value is. I mean, even on this like Whatnot platform, you don't have to start it at $1 and cross your fingers. If it's an $80 item, start it at $60. Mm-hmm. If that's what your bottom line is or what have you.
Yeah, never run something if you're not going to make money if it sells. Because if you run it for $1, there's a strong possibility it could sell for $1.
Yeah, or even if it sells for $8 or $9. It just a lot of it has to do with the audience in your room. But yeah, we'll go over Whatnot, and whoever's interested in it. If you're not on it already, we'll give you some ideas for it. Mm-hmm. I know Ryan will have a lot of information on it. He's been, like Liz said, doing it a long time, so he'll know more about that than us.
But I think going back to the podcast topic with resellers quitting, I think a lot of people are frustrated with eBay.
Yeah.
their search, we've noticed ourselves, the search engine is garbage.
Horrible.
Like you could literally search word for word on eBay and not even get your listing, or it come up with something else, or it's not showing stuff that's sold, but then you scroll down and yes, it does.
Yeah. You'll go to sold comps and it'll say 0, and then you scroll down and there's like 4 of the same item that you're trying to sell. Like it's not picking up on, I don't know, their keyword search engine is just not good on eBay. Which is, I mean, they've been in business for 30 plus years, I think, at this point. And it's just, I don't know. It boggles my mind how bad it really is because of all the data that they have. It shouldn't be hard for them to give you accurate information. But
they want you to promote your listings, which ironically, our new account that we're doing with Ryan, we have close to 50 items and we took promoted listings off. So we're not promoting anything, and we're still in just a couple weeks, we've done $1,000.
Yeah. I mean, I forget what our sell-through rate is on that, but it's pretty good, especially for not doing any of their advertising. Going back to the eBay suggested...
Their promoted suggested percentage.
Thank you. Has gone up to like 15, 16, upwards of 17% on items, which, I mean...
I think that's worse than Amazon, and Amazon is like...
I mean, by the time you tie in their percent that they're taking already, I mean, your Amazon average costs... or ACOS is usually, I mean, if you're doing 15%, you're doing pretty good on that platform. But they're pay-per-click based, where eBay's pay-per-purchase, I guess you would call it. I don't know what the technical term is.
Yeah.
You don't get charged unless somebody buys it, which I do like that about it.
If they click on the promoted listing, the one that's the sponsored one, and they buy it from there, that's when you get charged.
Which they let you do as low as 2%. So I always do too, just to try to get it in front of a few more eyes. I have noticed that the item is showing at the top of the page or whatever if I search it.
It depends on the item, though. I mean, if you're going to be selling...
That's also random. Like sometimes it works, and I don't know.
Like a Columbia PFG vintage shirt, and there's thousands of those. I'm probably going to promote it at a little bit of something.
Sure.
Versus the stuff we're finding in the storage units in that other eBay account. We're not needing to run any because we're only putting stuff on there that we know is going to sell.
Yeah.
And that sells for a higher amount.
Yeah.
Sellers are frustrated with that. Yeah. Having to promote your stuff. And yeah, I mean, it gets frustrating when you're having to pay more for inventory. You're having to pay more to get your item shown. And then shipping costs are also increasing.
Yeah, I was going to say shipping has been kind of the recent frustration I've seen for a lot of people, because people are getting bad reviews from customers because their items aren't getting shipped on time. When it's, we're dropping them off in time. But I mean, I've even heard stories from like people at the post office that like they're outsourcing an outsourcing company, like these trucking companies, because they've laid off so many employees, or people have just up and quit, finding these truck drivers with CDLs to bring mail around the country is not easy when there's a lot of other competition for CDL drivers. So they've got, the USPS is hiring companies, which are then turning around and hiring companies to try to cover all of this. And it's a mess, really. But yeah, I mean, people are not getting their items on time, and which is leading to negative reviews and frustrated sellers.
And we're having to pay more.
Yeah.
You could ship a 8-ounce shirt for $3.50.
Right.
And now it's, sometimes it's up to $5 depending on, I've noticed that they're charging more for rural routes, because I'll look at an item when I go to buy the shipping and I think, why is that so high? And then I look up the address and it's in a rural area. So I think they're trying to really increase those costs, which in the end, I mean, we have to pay for shipping. We have to get it someplace. But
yeah, I mean, we have a friend out here that recently went to part-time reselling and full-time employment, and that was his big reason. I mean, he was a high volume seller, back when there was $1 day. Even at $2 day, the items he was searching for, he could find plentiful. Like, you could go into a Goodwill and it was a certain style of clothing that he was into, and so he could go pick up 15, 20 items at almost every Goodwill he walked into. But he was also selling these items at $7 plus $4 shipping, or $8. But now with shipping being upwards of $6-7, depending on if it goes across the country, for example, it just made it very hard for him to make sense to do it full time. Like, his margins were down so much. It was just him by himself. So to scale it back to what he was initially making as far as margins was just going to be more work than what he was willing to do or what it was worth to him, So, there's a lot of options for everybody, when it comes to making your day check, if you will, regardless if it's reselling or not. And that's why Liz and I, when we talked about starting this podcast, we wanted to not just talk about reselling, because there are a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of entrepreneurial things that have intrigued me while I've been researching reselling. I mean, you name it. I mean, we have friends that are window cleaners out here, had an interest in auto detailing. There's an RV repair company that's right down the street from Liz and I. It's two brothers that they do very well. I mean, you see their service truck leave every day, and they both just remodeled their houses, and so I think financially they're doing great.
There's always RVs going up and down the street.
But in this area it makes sense. In Arizona, like Florida, now would I do an RV repair shop in eastern Minnesota? Probably not. I mean, I don't know, but I'm sure the competition is going to be a lot higher. But either way, I mean, there's just all sorts of different ways that people can make money. So that's what's leading to resellers looking at other options, really. I mean, since COVID hit, I think that was kind of the peak of reselling, at least with our experience, just because a lot of people were at home and that's how they're doing their shopping. So for those that were willing to go out and source items at the time and get them listed, we're seeing a pretty good volume and good return. And right now, the economy is a little bit more questionable, if you will. I know people are...
our Q4 was down last year. It was down like 60%. Yes, we were not listing as much as we should have.
Yeah.
But we just were like, what is going on? And that was kind of when we had to really reevaluate, like, what are we doing? Are we going to continue to resell? If we are, I think we need to switch business models and try some new things if we want to keep it afloat.
Which again, our Amazon product thankfully has continued to increase year after year and quarter after quarter. But to Liz's point, without that, unless I don't think we would have continued just doing reselling full time. One of us or both of us probably would have went and got a full or a part-time job or something during that time, whereas now with Whatnot and sourcing from the storage units kind of re-energize us, so to speak.
It's exciting, and I'm not dreading anything.
Where we know we can, run a show and, if all goes planned, make several $100, or Ryan's done shows which he'll talk about several $1,000s in a few hours time, just depending on what items you have, and he'll go into sourcing and what he's done over his few-year career doing that. But outside of that, sorry, my dog knocked down my water. Outside of that, did you have any other?
I think unfortunately there are a lot of resellers that are leaving it 100% or going down to part-time. There's just so many factors. I think in the end, you need to figure out what works for you, because there are so many different ways that you can resell, and that's, you have to change with the changes. If you're finding that you're not finding inventory, then instead of giving up, try to find other ways. So, if you want to leave reselling, I think that's perfectly fine. If you are still trying to make it work, it just takes a lot more effort than it did before.
Yeah, definitely. And for us, obviously we try to list everywhere we can. Yeah, so for us, we cross-list on several different platforms. Using List Perfectly, of course, helps us quite a bit, but that way we're not having to sign in and individually list these everywhere. We use technology to our advantage, and I think it's a smart thing to do if you're going to be doing reselling more than part-time. If it's something that's full-time, it just, again, to me makes sense to get it listed as many places as you can in the quickest time as possible. We'll see what Whatnot does for us this year. That's going to be one of our main focuses.
We have all the golf clubs. You guys know that. Yeah. And that should be the story, too, that we have on a podcast, is a story of how we got over 6,000 golf clubs.
Yeah, which I'm talking to local people to try to unload those as well. It's just pretty overwhelming, if you could imagine. And I would like to continue doing golf club reselling, but just now that we kind of jumped in with both feet, get to a more manageable space with it, and then go from there. Right now, it's just a little bit overwhelming. That's all I can say about that.
And we've gotten rid of quite a lot through yard sales, local, selling on eBay. And we did over 10,000 last year.
Yeah.
And you barely listed any of them.
Yeah, which Whatnot's a little tough for these clubs, I'm not going to lie. Most of the Whatnot community wants new stuff, and a lot of the stuff that we sourced is like 15 plus years old. Even though it's Titleist and Ping and Callaway and all these name brands, it's still not something quite for the Whatnot audience that we've found so far. But either way, we're working on getting rid of those so we can just focus on the other Whatnot stuff we're going to sell, which right now is going to be stuff that we get out of storage units, which we'll see how this first show goes.
Before we end, maybe share what's like one thing you would do differently if you were like at the end and wanting to give up on reselling. What would you do differently?
I guess what we've kind of done in our own business is started to niche down a little bit. So I think I was getting overwhelmed with just sourcing anywhere from car stereos to golf clubs to shoes to, glassware to tennis rackets we were...
Everything sellers.
Yeah, everything sellers, which the sourcing of that can kind of be a burnout where if you step into a Goodwill and you're sitting there or in that store for like well over an hour, and then you have to go to another one and another one. It can get a little boring, if you will. I don't even know if that's the right word. It just gets overwhelming because you bring home all of this random stuff.
And then you need boxes. And how do you ship them? And
right.
You have different size items that you're photographing. So you need different photograph areas. You need one for clothing. You need one for hard goods, one for shoes.
Yeah. So I guess if I was restarting completely today, like for us, we've kind of niched down to, because we're in Arizona, it's a big golfing community. So there's a big golf polos, golf shirts, golf shorts, golf pants, and then of course golf clubs. So kind of everything golf is where we've primarily tried to source recently.
Because it's still enjoyable.
Yeah, it's still fun to find like a cool Bad Birdie shirt with a cool print on it for $3.99, where it's like, sweet, this one will sell for probably 17 or 18 bucks. And
more than that with Bad Birdie.
Yeah, Bad Birdie
30,
35, whatever they go. Like Whatnot, we've seen you're not going to get as much on Whatnot as eBay. Period. It's more of a volume game. But yeah,
when you're first starting out, before you build a following, we're lucky we have a following, but still, we're still to the point where we're on Whatnot. Like all we have is 450 followers.
Yeah.
Which seems like a lot, but that's still not a ton. And I agree, doing a niche, I think finding something that you are interested in makes it a little bit more exciting, something you're knowledgeable about. Like you love golf clubs, and I'm learning about golf clubs, and that's been interesting to me. That
just makes it easier to source, essentially. Yeah. I mean, we can walk into a thrift store. We haven't really dove into pawn shops, which we should, because golf clubs, you can get good deals there. But I mean, we can be in and out pretty quick. I mean, I can scan over golf clubs and know if there's anything worth picking up.
And then I go to the golf polos. So having a team helps too.
Yeah, for us, it works well. But yeah, if I was starting over, I think I would start with trying to just do a certain niche. I mean, there's thrift stores online you can buy bulk Carhartt, for example, or like let's say you're just doing like the hunting military workwear, if you will. There's some people that kind of just stick with that lane and do well with it because it resells well. I mean,
I think it's easier to find inventory too, because one thing we're doing with Ryan is when we find stuff in storage units that there's a lot of, we're trying to unload that stuff quickly. Some stuff we put on Facebook Marketplace, put on eBay, but a lot of stuff we don't know a lot about, or we don't have the room to store it. We can't keep everything. So we've been trying to make local connections. And I think if you're known, like let's say Carhartt, you're locally known as a person that sells Carhartt, people are going to reach out to you and be like, I have an entire box of Carhartt stuff.
Yeah, Ryan does that often. He's got somebody that buys like graphic tees, for example, which, I mean, there's money to be made there. But there's some people that's all they do, and their following is specifically for that. So it's a lot easier just to unload it to them in bulk versus trying to piece it together and figure it out. I don't know. We're just learning like higher volume, quicker turnover, so we don't feel like we're a storage unit, within our own house, basically.
Because it does feel like that.
Yeah, and I mean, our goal this year is to grow into a physical store. So we're hoping that with Ryan and Bianca that we can open our own thrift store, because between the two of us, we can definitely source enough items. That's never really been the issue. It's how can you get rid of it? And listing it and sitting on it, those days are just kind of, I wouldn't say over, because they're certainly not, but we just want to move on to a different business model where we can just advertise locally using social media to get resellers into our store because we're primarily going to go after them and sell at a very reasonable price.
Because that's one thing Goodwill is not doing. They
Yeah,
are trying. They're so
listening.
greedy with their They're trying to price everything high. When resellers, I mean, that's you look at what people spent. I mean, I looked at what we spent. I can't remember what it was last year at Goodwill alone, and I'm like, geez Louise, like I can't imagine what some of these other resellers are spending per year at Goodwill, and they're just making it harder. And the stuff that's being donated it's junk.
Well, a lot of the good stuff, they're Goodwill's selling on Whatnot now. They're selling on eBay. You know, there's certain stores in different states that are literally selling on Whatnot from the store. So, like, if they continue to do that and kind of cherry pick all the good stuff, it's going to be very difficult to source from there. I mean, the clothing racks around us are packed. Like, you can barely get through them because there's just so much inventory because nobody's buying it at their retail price, really. Like I said, we saw polos for $24, $25. Like, I don't know who's going to buy those going into Goodwill.
They're going to wait till $2 day and then they're going to buy them.
Which is
they're
what
just
we
going to
do.
sit.
I mean, that's all we can do with shirts like that is just wait and look for them on $2 day if you're there at the right time. But I don't know. We believe in, like, if you're getting product cheap enough, I mean, you don't have to maximize your profit on every item. You can sell it for 30% less than the next person and still make money, move on to the next and go in that direction. So, but yeah, I mean, if I was restarting now, I think I would try to start with a niche, get to understand it a little better. The other thing with that, you can buy bulk on even eBay or, you know, Marketplace or whatever for certain items if that's what you're looking for specifically. I mean, there's all sorts of things, like Pokemon cards is a real big one. You know, I know Garage Sale Greg's into cards. We ran into him. That's what he was buying. So just picking a niche, I guess, and kind of running with it. It's easy to get excited and becoming an everything seller. And sometimes you're forced to do that just because of where you live. There's not that many outlets or options to source from. So
you kind of have to go with what you can.
Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky. We're in the Phoenix area. We're east of Phoenix, but we're still, 15 minutes from 8 to 10 Goodwills.
Oh, yeah.
And there's other thrift stores, too, around us.
The sourcing out here is plentiful if you want to take the time and look for it. But what about you? What would you do different?
Do the niche, but also look to see if somebody's getting rid of their eBay store. Look for somebody who's wanting to get out of reselling, because I do see a lot of that stuff on Facebook Marketplace, people trying to sell all their inventory. But on the other hand, you have to be very knowledgeable of what you're buying.
Yeah, I mean, Liz and I bought an eBay store early on, and I remember, they were trying to pitch the fact that it was like over 19,000 in listings, which, those are list prices. I mean, you're not going to get that typically, and who knows? We don't know what due diligence they were doing to price their items, if they were priced way too high and this and that. So we had to look at, we physically went and looked at the items as a whole before we made an offer on buying the store. And even then, I mean, it took us some time to recoup our money and then become profitable on that lot, per se. Hopefully, we've covered quite a few topics on the reselling game and why people are getting out of it. For us, has it been a challenge in the last, 6 months plus? I would say, more so than it had been in the past. Just with, everything that's going on economically throughout the world, not even just, within our own country. People are just spending a little bit different.
They're saving more.
They're saving a little bit more, of course. But I still see opportunity in that, because when people start spending more money, a lot of times it's the resold items that they're going to look for first.
To save as much as they can.
Yeah, just to save as much as they can. We're excited more too, just because of meeting with Brian and Bianca and kind of working together with them, moving forward on the reselling aspect of it. We have our private label Amazon business, and then the eBay and whatnot we consider our reselling business, really. So sourcing items with them and doing the storage unit auctions has been fun and something different. So don't be afraid to try something different if you're getting burnt out with just one thing in the reselling game. There's lots of options out there. It's just a matter of kind of putting your head down, and that's why we created this group, is to try to learn different things from each other. Obviously, Liz and I are just two people that are trying to do our best with our business, but there's a lot that we don't know. So anything you guys want us to talk about, or if I know Liz has mentioned, like, if you've got people that you like to follow and you maybe like to hear on this podcast, we can try to reach out to them and schedule them for a show.
Thank you guys so much. We had an overwhelming positive reaction to Casey being my new co-host, and a lot of you guys said, I knew it was going to be him.
Yeah, I'll try my best. I'm not the most comfortable in front of the camera or behind a microphone, but I'm getting there. So hopefully, we're adding value to you guys and continue to help you guys with your business journey.
Yeah. So make sure you guys join our private Facebook group if you want to be a little bit more involved with the podcast and meeting other people that follow the podcast. So thank you guys for listening, and keep working towards that day check.